Yes, folks, welcome back. What we do here is go back. My name is Rudy, you're watching Alpha Investments. Today we're going to go through a very interesting thing that I get commented on all the time. We're going to wear the pink visor so you guys know this is not a comedy video today. So today we're going to talk about this slang term that another store owner and myself used to talk about on a regular basis. And the slang term was sliver. Not like what you all know as in the Sliver Queen, the Sliver Lore Overlord, not the Sliver Magic cards from the 90s, but we had this acronym called SLIVER. And we used to talk about this because, you know, nobody's really going to know what it means. And of course, in the Magic world, people just think you're talking about a Sliver Queen or some sort of Sliver card. Well, the term Sliver was actually something that we had devised and talked about many years ago when I first, and some of you even found my old message board from 2005. I remember there's a few people on the internet that had found my 15 years ago young Rudy talking about investing in magic boxes. Some of you are well played out there on the Collector's Universe message board. Good, well played. So this is what we're going to talk about today. People ask me all the time about, Rudy, can you explain why certain boxes are better investments? How do you determine what to make a large investment in? How do you distinguish a good or bad product? And for those of you who are just here to thumbs down, slap me across the face and go home for the day, the short answer is there is no set answer. There's no way to know in advance. You cannot predict the future. And if you're looking for a bulletproof kind of high 99% chance of making money, I can't help you because I can't predict the future. It is impossible. There's no way. But just with anything that's dealing with numbers and large data sets over 20, 30 years, you can always come up with strategies that have higher probabilities. And that's kind of what any real institutional investor focuses on. On Wall Street, they look at investments and they try to use things, okay, well, if it sways to the left or right, how can we hedge this risk? How can we hedge that risk? Where we at least have a lesser or minimal exposure to something going bad. You know, why do we believe A, B, and C is going to happen? So this is going to be based around taking that same type of thought process with a magic product. If you're a big fan of Call of Dash, you're a big fan of the lottery boxes, core sets, Oath of the Gatewatch, Lottery Again, or the new Ravnicas, whatever it is, we're going to give some interesting examples. So first, we're going to start off with something simple because everybody can relate to it, at least those of you who were around in 2017 when you saw the Angry Rudy boom and bust in the iconic Masters era. So what you need to understand is every product has a certain life cycle, everyone. You have these magic products that you have pretty much the supply of the product on the open market at release, towards out of print, and as the product ages, long past out of print. So you pretty much have a day one number, kind of a 12-month number, and then usually a 3 to 5 year number. And you can apply this to any magic set. You can apply the sliver method to any magic set. So let me explain the variables. Supply represents how much of the product is at day one. How much of the product's after 12 months, and what do we either speculate, or if it's an old product, how much product's left on the open market after 3-4 years. So that's the first. Land. I mean, look, the second or third video ever made on this YouTube channel in 2016 was about owning land and property, land, real estate, because it's a very important piece of the nice chocolate cake, also known as pie. And the land cycle, it's cheesy, it's silly, but the land cycle does matter. Magic and land always matters. It is a big deal. That's one of the biggest reasons right now, as of the filming this video, we are dealing with the new Theros 2.0, and a lot of people are saying over and over, if Theros had a good land cycle, the entire Theros situation with expected value and the supply and demand maybe would be healthier. A lot of people are blaming the land cycle. Everybody else just says, no, Rudy, collector's boxes ruin everything. Slap your own taco. I do every Wednesday night. So, land is important. The next thing is the overall intrinsic value. That intrinsic value is kind of a value if you're an options trader or you trade derivatives. There's two types of value overall without getting into the Greeks. When you deal with, let's say you're just doing something simple, like you want to buy a call or a put. No spread, strangle, straddle, just a basic derivative on Wall Street. You have pretty much time value in the overall, if the option or the contract is in the money, you have intrinsic value. If you have a contract to buy a stock at 10 bucks, right now the stock's at $15, you already have $5 in the money intrinsic value plus whatever the time premium is, also known as theta. Don't want to get into that. I know a lot of you guys are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So intrinsic value means what is the current value of the cards within the box. That's all it means. many people nowadays, the slang term on YouTube is EV, expected value. But technically, the actual thing derived from intrinsic value. Next thing I want to say is variance. Variance is one of those very strange things. Pretty much when you get the overall value of the cards out of a sealed product, what's the variance? If you open one box and you don't hit a $200 mana crypt, is the rest of the box zero? So you have a huge variance? High, standard deviation, high volatility? What is kind of the, what's the VIX? What's the fluctuation? What is the implied swings of the expected value of the booster pack or the sealed box? That's all it is. Because if some of you have been around the industry long enough, you understand, not all, just because a booster box of Magic may have an expected value of $100 and another booster box has an expected value of $100, does not mean both boxes are worth the same. Because you can have box A where it's filled with $5 cards, which gives you an expected value of $100. Box B could have all 5-cent bulk, and then one card worth $1,000 gives you an EV, as they say it nowadays, of $100 a box. So the calculations and the swings of variance are not the same. This is going to be a very meaty video, everybody. This is definitely going to be more fajita steak grilled taco. This is going to be more of a clunky video because I want to do a lot more finance. Because if you're really into learning this stuff, there's no way around it. If you're really serious and you really want to understand how Rudy thinks, what's involved behind the scenes on me spending the insane amounts of money on Magic for myself, for investing long term, carrying the product, the inventory for patrons, the stores, storing the product, it's a very complex system. And you have to have a desire to learn this. If you don't have a passion, this is going to bore the living crap out of you. So, okay. After the variance, the expectations. Expectations is a very interesting one, everybody. You have, again, we're going to have 3 categories here. Expectations is pretty much, what do we expect the value to be of the box of cards on day 1 release? What do we expect the value to be after a year? And what do we expect the value of, in other words, what are the expectations of the market? What doesn't matter what the real value of intrinsic number expected. What is the expectation? What is the market expecting? When Iconic Masters in 2016, 2017 was first announced, everybody said, oh my God, the reserve list is over. Rudy's going bankrupt. I've been bankrupt 48 times and I'm only, how old am I? 36 years old now? 35. I'm 35. I've been bankrupt 47 times. So I go bankrupt every 6.8 months because I can't do math. You get it? Because that doesn't add up? Okay. So expectations means what is the market expecting? When Iconic Masters was first announced years ago, everybody expected, the market immediately drew their own expectations that the reserve list was ending. They're going to reprint iconic cards through Magic's history, and the end was near. Magic's coming to an end, blah, blah, blah. Everything's being ruined, blah, blah, blah. So the expectations were set at a certain benchmark, and it did not deliver on day 1. And then a year later, Iconic Masters tanked and still was down in the dumpster. 3 to 4 years later, which is today, 2020 is the filming this video, the supply is very low and expectations have changed. So now, the last and final thing which ties into expectations, which is why the ER is kind of at the end here, the little emergency crap. ER at the end, R means the release. In other words, the expectations of the public, the expectations of the timetable, and the release, which is the end of the R represents what actually happened. What happened at release? Was it a home run? What happened a year later when the market was over it? We're bored. We're 20 sets ahead, Rudy. I'm leveraged 10 more credit cards. Rudy, I don't care anymore. And then 5 years later, what actually happened along the actual timeline? So to summarize, everybody, you have your S.L.I.V.E.R, also known as your S.L.I.V.E.R system. This is something I've been applying to the Magic market now for, I think I first started using the system. I'm honestly, everybody, I'm gonna guess I first started evaluating boxes of cards probably about, I'm gonna say probably 2014, 2015, a couple of years before I went on YouTube. And I actually first started to apply this method when I first started my large investments in Revise and Mirage, which was about 2012 for Mirage, 2013 when I expanded into Revise, buying PSA 10 dual lands for under $100 a piece. And it kind of, in other words, to give you an idea. So that's when I realized that, I'm thinking about this stuff but there's actually a system to it. It was literally almost like an aha moment, because I didn't realize I was using this method. And then eventually I was like, wow, wait a minute. I wrote it down and I realized there's actually some sort of systematic process I've been doing, but not really, writing it down and making it official. But anyways, after all this time, I thought it was a good time to actually make a video publicly to kind of tell you guys the method I use. So we're going to go into a good example today. We're going to first start out with a product today. Let's use Throne of Eldraine. And then let's use the new Theros, and let's use a core set. Let's jump around, shall we? Remember, long video. Hope you guys are eating your pizza rolls, your frozen bagel bites, and of course your fast food tacos. Make sure you save your leftover tacos so they're real soggy the next day. So first thing we're going to go with is, what do you guys want to do? Let's do Throne of Eldraine. Throne of Eldraine came out of the gate. Originally, the supply was very low. So we actually did not have a very, how do I say it? The supply of Throne at the beginning was very tight. There was a lot of issues. The supply started out very low, which for an investment, that's positive. And then here we are about, going on maybe 6 months later with Throne of Eldraine. It's stabilized. There's a ton of supply. I've got enough boxes now. I'm caught up. Nobody cares. That's a negative. So the fact that it's running well and doing well, that is actually a negative thing for long-term investing, because there's a crap ton of supply of Throne of Eldraine. Now, here's the question we don't know, because it's a new product. We don't know the 5-year time frame of Throne of Eldraine. So that is a that's going to be just a flat-out question mark. I guess I'll just put a question mark, you guys. I'll use just a question. We don't know. So 5 years from now, we don't know what's going to happen with Throne of Eldraine. So you go to the next category. Throne of Eldraine, what's the land cycle in it? Personally, I like the land cycle in Throne. They're not super expensive. They're not basic pain lands, stupid scry lands. I like it. Why? Because the lands are unique. They have unique art, unique flavor. It's a weird style. It's not a normal core set land. I like it. So at release, overall, the land, I still like it from release. Even now, I still like the land cycle. And again, we don't know what the last category is going to be, because we have no idea. We have no idea how the land is going to go in the future. So next, when you go back to the actual value of Throne of Eldraine, day one, boom. Which is amazing, because there's Throne of Eldraine collector's boxes. Very, very impressive. Here we are, moving into Throne. Again, we're only about 6 months instead of a year, but close enough. So now, when you look at intrinsic value on Throne of Eldraine, you're going, wow. Throne of Eldraine's been out for like 6 months now, and the expected value is still holding a nice, what, 90 bucks, 100 bucks, who knows? Boom! That's a nice solid one. It's looking pretty good for the future there. Okay, then you go to the variance. What's the variance of Throne of Eldraine? We've done a ton of box openings on YouTube. Most of you watch them. Most of you people just don't. You mute it because you don't want to hear me because you hate me. And other people just watch the cards. Well, I can tell you this. The variance, because I've opened a ton on camera. A ton. You guys have seen it. I think we're at video number, 20-something? So we opened, 40 boxes on camera? The variance is low. Low variance means most people who buy the box and open it, the value is going to stay pretty consistently. Not a lot of people going to Pound Town. Not a lot of people are making millions. I like it. And here we are 6 months later. Still looks good. All the value is not piled into OCO or bust. That's what we like to see. Next, expectations. At release, expectations were high, and it delivered. Here we are 6 months later. Expectations were fine. No problems, no issues. We had a little blip with supply, but fine. So again, we don't know. We're using a new product here. Now, the overall, what actually happened? What actually happened at release? Actually, release was strong, but guess what? They had a huge supply issue for a couple months. So they had problems, but most likely in the future now, the actual release will be remembered and it'll still be smooth. There won't be a lot of problems. So that the last one on the release doesn't really, in other words, as it released through time, what actually happened. So overall, we don't know what happened to all these. But based on looking at the data set, honestly, overall, it really hits a lot of categories. And I'm not saying that we're trying to hit a perfect 10 here, because I mean, what do we got, 12 boxes? Let's not include the last here. Usually, in general, though, if you can get at least that perfect 10, I know there's 12, but I mean, this is 10 out of 12 for these first two categories. That's very, very strong. So overall, the probability, in my opinion, is skewed slightly above average that Throne will age better than something like, I don't know, a regular set that did. I don't have a good example to compare it to. So historically, based on what we see, chances are it's going to do well. So before I erase everything, let me give you guys an example here. So now in the future, Rudy, what do you think? So in the future now, 5 years from now, what do you think Throne of Eldraine supply will be? I actually think Throne of Eldraine supply will be kind of... it'll still be existing, kind of like some of the Ravnica sets or certain things, but it's not going to be super low. I think the supply is going to be pretty heavy. A lot of Throne of Eldraine boxes are going to exist out there, so I think that's going to be negative. I don't think Throne of Eldraine in a couple years is going to be tough to get. Be honest with everybody. Next, the land cycle. I still think the land cycle is very unique. Besides maybe some challenger deck reprints, I don't think you're going to see Throne of Eldraine, Fairy Tale lands, and all kinds of new products. That's my opinion. Intrinsic value, overall, this is where a lot of you are going to disagree. I don't think it's going to have it. I think it cycles out of standard. I think the value of the actual Throne of Eldraine cards go down and stay down. With the challenger deck reprints and Wizards loving to do all these secret layers, I think the intrinsic value of the cards within the box are going to suck, and it's going to stay that way. So we started off good. 6 months later, which is today, we're still good. 5 years from now, I think the value is going to suck. I think it's going to tank, and no one's going to care. Next, the variance. I actually think the variance is still going to stay pretty stable. I don't think it's going to be like Oko or bust. I think overall, the value throughout the box will stay pretty leveled. You're not going to have one God pack and everybody else goes to zero. I don't think it's going to be the case. Expectations, negative. Negative, Ghost Rider. Why? Because you have to think differently. People love Throne. I love Throne. So the market's expectations is that the set's going to do well. And that people are expecting Throne of Eldraine to age well and be a good investment. And the fact the market believes that is a negative. That is a negative, Ghost Rider. The fact everybody's on the same page and you don't hear I don't see anybody saying Throne of Eldraine sucks. Nobody's doing that, which means everybody's too bullish. Contrarian indicator, that's a bad sign, everybody. Too much positivity. All right, so now the official release thing as we age, what do I actually think's going to happen and unfold? That one's kind of tough to say because we really don't know. We're comparing a new product here. Overall, I think that's going to be a net neutral. That's going to be, there's no way to say good or bad. So overall, look at this. Throne of Eldraine, you got the up, down, up, down, up, down. You got every other. So in other words, there's a lot of risk to it. But overall, I think Throne of Eldraine will age well. It has some things going against it, which is pretty much people are expecting it to do well. The card value within the box is going to stay very low. So the cards are not going to go up in value, but the sealed product will. The supply will be very high, which is a negative, but it has a unique land cycle, a lot of consistent value within the box, and I think that's pretty much where it's going to stay. So that is it. That is the first big example. Overall, looking at something like this, for me, that gives me the green light. When I look at this, I think of Throne of Eldraine, that is a green light for me long-term to sit on at least 100 plus boxes, straight up. No reason not to. There's some risks along the way. It's not perfect, as most sets aren't perfect, but overall, it's a straight up, there's no reason for me to walk away and keep no product. There's no reason. It looks good. I don't see any real major risks besides some little things, and the market expects easy money. I see some little things like the supply, but I think it'll be fine. I don't think it's going to be really that bad. Boy, this eraser is terrible. Look at that, you guys. It's terrible. Isn't that crazy? Okay. So, I want to pick something else. So, let's talk about... Ooh, what do we do? You'll do a Commander? Let's do... No, Modern Horizons. Let's do Modern Horizons. This is a really good one, everybody. Modern Horizons. This is good. So, supply of Modern Horizons. At release, supply was pretty tight. So actually a tight supply means the beginning, that's happy. 6 months later, Modern Horizons supply, through the roof. Through the roof. Terrible. Modern Horizons supply, a year later, here we are. Too much product. Wizards overdid it. They kept printing it. They did huge print runs. That is a negative, Ghost Rider. Next, Land Cycle. Holy crap, Land Cycle, Modern Horizons. Are you kidding me? We don't even need to talk about it. Triple full Monty right there, everybody. How can you not be happy with that? Intrinsic value. Now this is a really funky one, everybody. All right, intrinsic value for Modern Horizons. At release, through the roof. Remember what happened? And it stayed that way. And remember, for the longest time, Modern Horizons, even 6-7 months out, was still 200 plus a box. Incredible. Now here we are a year later. Intrinsic value has finally collapsed. And as you can see, the reason why it's collapsed is because the supply was overdone in the long run, which caused the other category to collapse. They correlate. Some of these categories always correlate together. So, variance on this thing. Overall, most Modern Horizon boxes, they were pretty consistent. You didn't have a Modern Horizon box where you got hosed. And I mean, overall, it did pretty good. Even now, I don't think you had the Horizon lands, a lot of good mythics, a lot of good rares. You had a good variance of card. It was a good mix. I think that was a home run there. Expectations, holy smokes. The market expected just a ridiculous set, even expected it, and now, but now, the most important moment of the video, the market now expects overprinted into oblivion. Supply is garbage. Everything is garbage. The value is garbage. Everything is garbage. You see what's happening here? So now, what actually happened? Right out of the gates, home run set, did real well. Everybody was happy. 6 months later, still did real well. Here we are a year later. Sorry. A year later, and guess what? Expectations, everything's in the toilet. Very interesting here. So if you look at Modern Horizons, this specialty set, look how amazing it started out. And then it started to show cracks. Even after 6 months, still did great. And now, here we are a year later, it's flipping Pound Town. Do you see this craziness? What the heck happened? What? It's like Iconic Masters 2.0. I mean, people, when this product came out at release, these things were on eBay for $230, $240 a box. Not even including tax. Local stores I saw it, pictures. Local stores around the country were selling Modern Horizons for $250 a box plus tax. $270 out the door for Timmy's around the country. So, an overall conclusion, everybody, Modern Horizons was so good. Wizards saw so much in dollar signs. Their eyeballs turned into dollar signs, like the S up here. They smashed it. So what's going to happen here is I still plan to keep a large position long term. I still love Modern Horizons. It is one of my favorite sets, next to probably Throne of Eldraine in many, many years. I love the Modern Horizons product. But everybody needs to fully understand, because of Wizards' decision, after 6 to 9 months, with the size of the reprint and stocking and what happened later on, it's going to permanently stunt the growth of Modern Horizons in the short term. Nobody could have predicted it. It's not any of you's fault. It's not my fault. It's not distributors' fault. It's not any stores around the country. It's not the Flying Castle Kingdom card, really awesome things, Channel Snowball. It's nobody's fault. It's, well, I guess Wizards, if you want to say. They chose to see how good it was doing, and their last final reprint, which was many months ago, probably 6 months ago, was so massive. They just can't burn through enough product. So because of that, this is not a bad investment, but it's going to be a slow investment. I do not see easy money. I don't see a huge return in the short term. It's going to take. So now let me erase this. Let me show you guys something. Okay, I want to show you. Let me. Do I have something different to wipe this with? Hang on, everybody. Let's use just a little wet paper towel here. So what I think is actually going to happen is I think we're going to go through this long period of time where the actual product is going to be flat. I think Modern Horizons is now going to go through a time period similar to Iconic Masters. So what happened, everybody, is if you want to take this chart here, I guess that's my chart. So you have pretty much Modern Horizons comes out, does real well. Spikes on eBay, holds a high price, does real well, okay? And then it starts to drift and stabilize, okay? And then this is probably, let's just say what, $200 a box, $250 a box, let's say $150 a box down here. Let's make a little chart here. So as time went on with Modern Horizons, it drifted and drifted and drifted lower. Now we've kind of flatlined and we've kind of been like this. So now the market on eBay averages 170 to 180, and we've kind of just flatlined with Modern Horizons. This is almost the same chart that Iconic Masters. Like literally, no joke everybody, Iconic Masters came out like this, tanked, and then Iconic Masters went like this. That was Iconic Masters. Maybe not over a different time frame, but the overall chart was the same thing. Modern Horizons is doing the exact same thing, but it's a little different. Remember, nobody expected Iconic Masters to come back in price. Everybody expects Modern Horizons to come back in price. So there is a major difference between the boom and bust of Iconic Masters and the boom, and then not really the bust, because, you know, Modern Horizons didn't tank by like 50%. Remember, Iconic Masters went from like 220, 230 to 120, like a 50% decline. Modern Horizons didn't experience that. Modern Horizons, actually, let me give you guys an idea. So we had pretty much a negative, what, 55%? Because what, from 230 to maybe what, 120 was the low on Iconic Masters? So going 55% down versus right here, we averaged at the peak maybe 220, and now we're at 170. What is that, maybe 23%? Hashtag math. So again, Modern Horizons has only dropped 23% from the all-time high of like 220, 230. You compare that to Iconic Masters, there's a huge difference in the degree of the swing. So, my biggest takeaway of this whole thing as we start to wrap up this video, and now we're going to have a little life speech here at the end, is that Modern Horizons is going to do well long term. But it's not going to be the quick, easy money that a lot of people, including myself, originally thought when I built my couple hundred box position. I'm still going to keep my 300 to 500 box position. I don't plan on reducing or increasing it. But at the same time, I think the open market price of about 175, 180 on eBay, I think as the years go by, it will push back to 200, 250, and even 300 one day. But instead of being a 12, 24 month time frame, I'm thinking we're looking at a 3 to 5 year time frame. It's going to be a lot slower and a lot less profitable than everybody expects. And because of that, it's going to feed on itself, because a lot of the weaker hands holding some of the sealed boxes will probably end up giving up after so much time and putting their product back on the open market, which is going to suppress it from going up in price because supply is going to keep showing up. So in conclusion, I don't think it's actually a bad long-term hold, but I believe it's going to be a slower moving hold than originally calculated by myself, many investors, collectors, Magic players, store owners, and distributors around the country. So not that it's bad, but it's just going to go in a different route than we all expected. So that's a really important thing to use. I think that was a great example. I want to give a couple little comments here before we end the video. I want to pick on Commander 2019 and Brawl decks and a couple other little supplemental products. The Brawl decks was an interesting case because the Brawl decks came out and the supply was so low at release because Wizards' expectations were so low. The price just skyrocketed. The intrinsic value of the cards within the product, everything was just sky high. And it was a really wacky product. And then there was a reprint coming. Everybody got scared after what the middle time frame came, and it caused the prices to crash. And then the reprint came for Brawl decks, and it was very small. All the distributors are out of Brawl decks. You can't get them anymore. And I actually believe now Brawl decks are probably going to be the next big investment that people didn't see coming. I have another video probably coming just on Brawl decks. But the Throne of Eldraine Brawl decks is probably going to become a diamond in the rough because of the lack of reprint situation compared to the Modern Horizons Commander products. And that's going to play a very big role in the short term of moving the sealed product price simply because of lack of supply, period. Next thing, Commander 2019. Similar concept, everybody. The only difference is Commander 2019 had huge expectations, a monster release, and then the reprint later on was so massive, it completely crushed the hopes and dreams of tons and tons of stores, collectors, investors, distributors. There are still distributors sitting on tons of these things. And it doesn't mean Core 2019 is a bad investment. It just means, just like Modern Horizons, it's going to go a lot slower than anticipated. Now, one little fun fact for those of you still watching this long of a video on a long, hard Phyrexian Gordita Chalupa Supreme Party Pack Nacho Fries is that, remember, Commander 2015 did the same thing. I know many of you weren't around 5 years ago, but let me explain something very important to a lot of you. In 5 years ago, or actually about 6 years ago compared to the release date, almost 6 years ago, Commander 2015 came out, and at release it did okay. But overall, there was so much on the second wave reprint, Commander 2015 completely collapsed, crushed its price, went down to nothing. Stores couldn't sell it, distributors couldn't unload it. The market was so angry because the expectations were high and the real value of it was low and just the supply was high. It was a terrible thing. And what ended up happening is Commander 2015 sat for an extra 6 months to a year, kind of like Modern Horizons, and Commander 2019 is currently serving its time. And fast forward years later, Commander 2015 went from the low of about $90 for a 5-deck set, not 4-deck, 5-deck set, was on a low of $89.99 because nobody wanted Commander 2015. Now that product 5 years later, I would assume is probably $200 to $300. So within 5 years, you're probably looking at a 100% to 200% return, or maybe a 20% to 40% annual return, something ridiculous. But the way it worked was so unexpected, and the way the numbers unfolded was so bizarre, it caught everybody off guard. People weren't ready for it. And I do fully believe Modern Horizons and Commander 2019 are going to go the same path of the overprinted 2015 Commander. So again, there's a difference between not being a good product versus having too much of the product and determining how the product's going to age. Because market perspective, negativity, what everybody talks about today is not going to represent how everyone's going to feel in 1 year and in 5 years and in 10 years. The further out you go on that timeline, the more and more different everybody feels. Remember that. Tomorrow morning, everyone's going to feel the same way about Modern Horizons as they do today. But I promise you, a year from now, people are going to start changing their tone. And in 5 to 10 years from now, people are going to look back and go, oh my God, do you remember how negative everybody was with Commander 2018 and of course Iconic Masters? And, do you see my point? It's the way human psyche, time, psychology, it's how we look at things and evaluate things. So that's all I have today. Hope you all learned something very interesting. I don't know, #S.L.I.V.E.R. You guys have a fantastic day. And as always, make sure you're having fun.